What is going on, guys? Welcome to the Only Football Podcast. We are back in the studio. Gosh, it feels great. And these pods, man, they might be seeming like they come out late, maybe a little bit later in the summer than we do in the fall. And there's a reason for that. And guys, it is fully bright out right now where I live. There is no sunset. It's not even at the part of the night where, it's like, oh, it's the pinkish in the sky. Like, we are full blue sky. This is what during our winters, this is equivalent to 2 in the afternoon. So it is a little weird trying to get adjusted to the sun difference because it is fully in effect. You gain like 2 minutes of sunlight every day for, I don't know, like 3 or 4 months. And then finally, you just have a day. Today was my day. It happens once a year when it's bright. It happens once a year when it gets dark, where it just hits you. You're like, dude, it is 9:11 to be exact. And it is bright out. It just hit me. It creeps up on you. But that's why maybe it seems like they come out a little bit later in the summer and a little bit earlier in the winter. So the NFL released something that I thought was pretty cool 7 hours ago. And they released the story, and the way they titled it is called Make or Break Candidates. So this is players that are at a crossroad entering 2022, 2023. Now, I haven't read this article, but I'm going to guess that one of these players is going to be Russell Wilson. For obvious reasons, we saw the biggest downfall of a player single-handedly in NFL history last year. This is a guy that was pure Hall of Fame quarterback. There was no doubt about it in just 1 year. If you ever wonder how bad 1 year can be on your legacy, there are debates whether he's a Hall of Fame quarterback or not anymore. And look, not only am I not a Russell Wilson fan before the trade to Denver, I don't like that word. I feel dirty saying it. I highly disliked Russell Wilson because the Seahawks destroyed my Broncos, right? So not only was I indifferent about Russell Wilson, I was the last guy to tell you that Russell Wilson was a Hall of Fame quarterback. And I understand he's a Bronco now, so maybe I'm a little biased, but look, the guy's won more games in his first 10 years than anybody in the history, more than Tom Brady. He went to 2 Super Bowls. He won one, or he went to 2 Super Bowls, won one. Should have won. Oh, wait, no. Yeah. So he went to back-to-back Super Bowls. He won one. He should have won 2, but they didn't run with Marshawn Lynch. And if you want to know what the product is of that, you can look at Marshawn Lynch's DUI fully uploaded on the cop body cam. That man is still mad they didn't run it on the 1-yard line. There's some skeletons in that closet that are coming out at 6 a.m. in Vegas. But I'm going to just say that he is still a Hall of Fame quarterback. You can't look, no matter how bad you are in 1 year, it does not take away what you've done in the past. Now, that is the ultimate question. Now, I don't know about these other quarterbacks, and I haven't even looked at the list, but I want to open up with that question, kind of an open-ended question. Let me word this properly. Can you take away what you've done in the past by being, let's just say, terrible? I don't believe so. I believe that what is done in the past is solidified. It cannot be tampered with, no matter how bad of a season you have. We know Peyton Manning in his last year had a huge decline. He happened to win the Super Bowl on the back of the defense, which kind of saved his entire image, or the way that we think of Peyton Manning. Nobody remembers him for that bad year. We remember him as, a funny personality, great at commercials, great at everything he does, and one of the best to ever throw the pigskin. So Now, I was on the side saying, no, you cannot take away your past with a bad performance. But don't we kind of play by different rules with everything else? Let's say you are a really good guy, but you robbed a bank, right? Um, Nobody would take into account in the courtroom that you did really, that you were a good person in the past. Like, we call it being a prisoner of the present. We definitely put the most emphasis on what you have done for me lately. And that's the culture we live in. Now, I personally, I tend to try to put it on a balance. Like, I'm going to consider what you've done for me lately, but I'm also going to, I don't even want to say consider, because that makes it sound like it's an option to just forget about everything good he's done. But I'm definitely going to accept what he's done in the past, and then consider what he has done last year in relation to where we're at. Okay. But apparently, to some people, that is not the case. And you can do so bad that you are no longer a Hall of Fame quarterback, especially when everybody attributes your success to a guy named Pete Carroll and the Legion of Boom. Okay. Because when you have basically 1 year sample size of how you perform outside of the maybe the culture that was working, and it's a complete dumpster fire, people aren't looking at Nathaniel Hackett wondering, oh my God, how did this guy even get a job head coaching? No one's gonna look at him. They're gonna say the 1 year we got of Russell Wilson, he was a complete dumpster fire. He was a faker this whole time. We do that segment, contender or pretender. Well, we thought he was a contender until he got to Denver, and now everybody's pointing the finger saying this is a pretender. So he will be on this list, because the one thing that Russell Wilson still has is that Nathaniel Hackett might be the worst first-time head coach besides Urban Meyer in my entire lifetime. Not with the Broncos, with any franchise on any level of professional sports. Okay, so now there's Sean Payton. So that excuse is gone. And in a lot of ways, it feels like there's a lot more pressure because there is nobody to take the fall this year, right? And that's why I believe Russell Wilson will be on this list. If I had to pick a second quarterback, I'm going to go Baker Mayfield. First overall pick, I actually rewatched the 2018 Hard Knocks. That was probably an underrated Hard Knocks. Might be the best ever. A lot of arguments, a lot of tear jerkers. We know that the head coach actually lost his brother and his mother in the same week. It was a very eventful. Caldwell, what's his name? Caldwell, the receiver for the Florida Gators, who was supposed to be a first overall pick and ended up somehow getting pushed all the way to the fourth round because he had DUIs and driving with suspended license. And then the Cleveland Browns actually had a terrific draft. They drafted Nick Chubb and they drafted Baker Mayfield. And then in the fourth round, they drafted somebody that was projected to be a first overall or first round pick in Caldwell. I believe I'm saying his name right. I'll verify really quick. But that was a very talented grab the Cleveland Browns did, and they took a chance on him. And as you see in the Hard Knocks episode, he gets pulled over, marijuana in the car. When he talks to the coach about it, he says it was a roach. If you are not a marijuana consumer and you've never heard the term roach, a roach is when you are smoking a blunt. Well, if you're not a marijuana smoker, a cigarillo with the brown wrapper, and that is when you split it down the side, you take all the tobacco out, and then you load it with marijuana, and then you smoke it. And then when it gets really short, the smoke gets kind of hot, it burns your fingers. People will put it out, and then they'll save those roaches because on a day that you maybe don't have money for marijuana, or you just are in the mood, you can collect all of the little ones and you split them all, take them all out, or you can even put them all into, a big one and start the whole process over. But I'm just saying, he said it was a roach underneath the seat, which means that it was an old blunt. And it was really interesting because I've always wondered, like, when somebody gets pulled over for marijuana, how long does it take for the Cleveland Browns to find out? What's that conversation like when because all we see is the coach come on the podium and be like, I talked to blank. And, I've always wanted to be a fly in the wall. And on this Hard Knocks, you actually get to be a fly in the wall. It's really, really interesting, really neat. Obviously at someone else's expense, unfortunately, but it is really cool to be in the room and to see that type of conversation take place. He ends up getting released from the Cleveland Browns, bouncing around. He's out of the league now. I believe the Cowboys just released him. He just keeps getting into trouble. I don't know if it was DUIs or more marijuana. I think the most recent one is his license was suspended. I'm sorry, but somebody's got to say it. How the hell is your license suspended? If you're making more than $22,000 a year, your license should never be suspended, ever. If you are playing professional football, you cannot have a suspended license. I just got to get this off my chest. When I was 18, I was on this whole F the system. I'm not going to do it. I dropped out of high school. I don't need a high school diploma. I don't need a GED. And then my uncle was like, dude, you're going to need a GED when you want to get a real job. And I was like, man, you're trying me. I don't know what I said, but it probably sounded something like that. I was an idiot. And then eventually an opportunity came to be a flight attendant. And guess what? You needed to have a GED. So I had to get a GED. They needed my driver's license, which means I had to pay parking tickets. Like, this is just part of being an adult. You have to make sure you have your driver's license, and you have to make sure your tickets are always paid. And even, in a perfect world, you don't have tickets. I've had one ticket in the last 5 years. Like, I mean, look, and I'm not a perfect person. Sure, I'm sure I've been speeding and just not got, wasn't caught, or maybe parked in front of a hydrant. I'm not saying I'm perfect by any means, but look, man, if you're getting paid $1 million, I swear these young men just need a mentor. They need an uncle like my Uncle Wolf. By the way, his anniversary with my aunt, 18 years together officially as of yesterday. That is a hard-fought 18 years. So congratulations to my Uncle Wolf and my Aunt Sissy. And if I swear, these players, man, they need an Uncle Wolf in their life to stick their foot up their ass, as Red would say on that 70s show, and get these guys in line, man. I don't think they're bad kids. I just think that they don't understand the significance of small things like making sure that your tickets are paid. Because when you're a kid, it just seems so, minimalistic. Like, who cares? It's a ticket. What are they going to do? It adds up and it becomes a problem. And I hate to see somebody with talent to go in the first round. Like, God, so many people would literally cut off their balls to be able to play football in the NFL, let alone be a first overall pick. And it sucks to see someone piss it away because they don't have an Uncle Wolf or whoever. But I forgot where I was going with this whole thing. The Cleveland Browns, Baker Mayfield. So I do believe Baker Mayfield is going to be on this list because he's drafted. We get a lot of insight on Baker Mayfield. He rented an RV and parked it outside the camper. And at the time, there was what was his name? The quarterback from Buffalo. He ended up getting hurt. He went to LA. He had a good year, and then he broke his rib. I'm blanking on his name. This dude is a real professional. God, what was his name? I'm going to look it up really quick. Cleveland Browns 2018 QB depth chart. I got to pay respect to this guy. It starts with a T. I just can't. Tyrod Taylor. Double T. Tyrod Taylor, man. Tyrod Taylor was a dog, man. I mean, he wanted it. He had the effort. He had the skill, the passion, the drive, the responsibility. He is, sometimes you hear me give my praise to Jalen Hurts. I'm like, he is what a quarterback is. Like, if you took all of the best qualities of what a quarterback is and just, created a player on Madden and did 99 to all of the most important quarterback, not just skill, but personality traits, you would end up with Jalen Hurts and Patrick Mahomes. I even think Jalen Hurts a little more when it comes to leadership. Patrick Mahomes is more talented. I think Jalen Hurts is more of a leader. But Patrick Mahomes is definitely a leader in his own right. Like, this is not like a bash on Patrick Mahomes. It's just we're comparing two tremendous leaders. That's all it is. So Tyrod Taylor was the starting quarterback apparently when they drafted Baker Mayfield, and they said Baker had to earn the job. Well, Baker didn't really take that serious, and there's a part where you see the coach, who was the head coach guy? I'm blanking on his name too, because I looked up where he is right now, and I think he's like the vice president of operations now. 2018 head coach. I just want to make sure I'm shouting out the people at not Cavaliers, Browns. Hugh Jackson. Hugh Jackson. And I'm going to put his name in really quick so we can see where he's at right now, because I looked all this up after, because I was watching the Hard Knocks and I got curious. He is the head coach for Grambling State. So he actually worked his way out of the league. I was thinking about somebody else that worked his way up. It was Jim Caldwell is the guy I was thinking of. Jim Caldwell. Let's see, where is he at? Right now, he is Carolina Panthers senior assistant. Anyway, so if you don't know who Caldwell is, he was the head coach for the Lions. He was the head coach for the Indianapolis Colts, and he kind of bounced around a little bit. He was the head coach for the Colts from 2009 to 2011. Then he was the quarterbacks coach for the Ravens, which is interesting because you see a lot of times when a head coach gets fired, he at least goes back to a coordinator position. Caldwell had to go all the way back to a quarterback coach. And then from the Baltimore Ravens, they moved him up from quarterback coach to interim offensive coordinator and quarterback coach. So now he's wearing two hats. Then the next year they made him the OC. And then he worked his way the next year back into a head coaching job with the Detroit Lions for 3 years. And then Miami hired him as assistant head coach and quarterback coach. And then 2023, he is the senior assistant for the Carolina Panthers. Just drafted Bryce Young. Okay. Anyway, so Hugh Jackson, he lost his sister and his mom, and it was really emotional. Well, he walks up to Baker Mayfield and he goes, hey man, like, what time did you get in? And then Baker goes straight to, like, the excuses. He's like, oh, I woke up kind of late. And he's like, yeah, that's not what I asked you. I asked you what time you got in. And I was like, oh, damn. And he tells him what time. He's like, why don't you come in when Tyrod Taylor comes in? And then Baker's like, oh, Tyrod's got his own little workout thing that he does by himself. And then Hugh Jackson goes, why don't you have your own little workout thing that you do? And it was, you could tell it like hit a nerve with Baker Mayfield. Like, you could tell it really kind of upset him. Like, man, I'm the first overall pick. Like, because you go from being, the first overall pick, everybody loves you. You walk around, you piss excellence, and all of a sudden you get to a new league where not only do you not have a starting position, but the person that you're supposed to be taking that position from is being complimented at your expense. And Baker did end up taking that team to a playoff game, and they did find a lot of success, not just Baker Mayfield, but drafting Nick Chubb and all of the players that they got. But then all of a sudden, Baker Mayfield finds out that Deshaun Watson is going to be a Cleveland Brown. He doesn't like it, whatever. They kick him out for Deshaun Watson. Unethical. It's a lot of things. We won't go down that road. But he goes to the Carolina Panthers, and he totally just sucks. And now the Panthers have Bryce Young. It's amazing how much changes in just a year and a half. Like if you just got an 18-month jail sentence, it's like in Baker Mayfield was, the Browns quarterback when you went and you got out today, you'd be like, oh, Baker's the quarterback of the Browns. No, Deshaun Watson is. Deshaun Watson? Where's Baker? He got traded to the Panthers. Oh my God. So the Panthers are good now? No, they sucked. Baker got traded. Where? the Rams. What? Don't they have Matthew Stafford? Yeah, he sucked last year. What? They won the Super Bowl. Yeah, no, they were terrible. He only played half the year. The Rams are the worst team following a Super Bowl ever. And then Bryce Young is now the Panthers quarterback. I mean, it's just like, you really got to follow this game like month to month to month, or you will be lost in the sauce. But Baker Mayfield, I believe, should be on this list. I'm not gonna read it yet, but he should be because Baker had really high expectations. And I remember watching a Denver-Cleveland game. All right. This was when Baker was either a rookie or year number 1, which is technically his second year. I remember sitting on a couch watching Baker light it up. And I remember thinking, man, because we had been 4 years removed from Peyton Manning. And I remember just thinking, like, when can we have a Baker Mayfield? I said that in my head watching the game. Like, when does Denver get to get a guy like that again? And only 3 years later, this man is expendable. He was free and nobody wanted him. That's what a free agent is. It means that anybody can get their hands on you and nobody wanted him. He ends up going to the Rams, having a good game. But now Tom Brady retired. Tampa Bay is giving Baker Mayfield an opportunity. This is a hard fork in the road. If he's not on this list, it's wrong. Because if Baker has even a lousy year this year, it's over. Like, over. Because Baker doesn't come across as the kind of guy that's going to be a backup. He just doesn't, man. He wants to start. He's a competitive person, which is a great thing. But you have to have the skill, or you're just there's too much friction in the locker room. So, and plus, it's like the Cam Newton thing. Like, can he be a backup? I don't know. It's like Tebow can't be a backup. Big personalities can't be backups. You know who your backups are? The 7 people that I can't name off the top of my head because they are so quiet. The Teddy Bridgewaters, the all those guys that got a contract and the Gardner Minshews, the Taylor Heineke, the guys that just kind of go there, they try to better them, like Baker Mayfield, Cam Newton, Tim Tebow, don't make great backup quarterbacks. So it's either Baker Mayfield is going to be a starting quarterback and he's going to be good at this and he's going to have another 10 years in his career, or he's going to be mediocre and he's going to be out of the league in 2 years. And I think most people, because of the way he got kicked out of Cleveland, I think most people are rooting for him. I think we all have that in common. We would love to see Baker be successful. And obviously he's got big shoes to fill, but I think it helps that Tom Brady was, I don't want to say old, but he definitely had his worst season as a player in his last season. Like, if he would have won that Super Bowl and retired, we would be like, those are some big shoes, right? He kind of left the bar at a, manageable height for Baker. So we'll see if he can reach it. I'm going to hit the article now. Those are my 2 players that I believe have to be in it. Number 1 on this list, Ryan Tannehill. And that's a good one. Because Ryan Tannehill is at that point in his career where he was, rejuvenated in Tennessee, and they were able to find success. But a lot of that had to do with King Henry getting the Russian crown year after year. That offense runs on the back of Derrick Henry. And last year was you got to think, man, when this team was in AFC championships and when they had the number 1 seed in the AFC, nobody was giving Tennessee their flowers. People said it was a fluke. They said they're not for real. They were not considered a legitimate threat in the AFC. So if you're a number 1 seed or you're playing for the AFC Conference Championship and you are still not giving your flowers, what do you think is going to happen when you have one bad year? The Wolves are coming. And that's what happened last year. Tennessee was the most injured team, and somehow they were able to keep that team, contending for the playoffs against Jacksonville, and that week 16 or week 17 game, the winner would win the AFC South. This was a close division. But when you think about Ryan Tannehill, right, because we don't give his flowers when he's good, that means when he's mediocre, we think it was a complete disaster. Tennessee didn't win one game last year. They didn't win 2, 3, 4, 5. I believe they won like 7 or 8 games. So Ryan Tannehill is definitely not given much grace when it comes to this type of stuff. Whereas Baker Mayfield might be given a lot more grace. Tannehill has been waiting at the intersection since his 3-interception outing against the Bengals in the divisional round in the 2021 playoffs. Since that forgettable performance, Tannehill has missed 5 contests due to injury, and he's done little to inspire confidence that he can be the man and lead Tennessee to the promised land. Tennessee attempted to prepare for the future without Tannehill by drafting Liberty's Malik Willis in round 3 of the 2022 NFL Draft. However, just as it became clear Willis wasn't ready to handle the duties as a starter, ownership made a change in the front office, firing general manager John Robinson, who was replaced by Rand Carthon this offseason. Having no attachment to Willis, Carthon spent a second-round pick on Kentucky's quarterback Will Levis in the 2023 draft. We cannot forget about Will Levis. Some people had Will Levis going in the top 3 picks in the first round, and somehow Will Levis was picked in the second round. I'm not saying that I would have picked him in the top 3 picks, but the chances of Will Levis being available on day 2 of the NFL draft was less than 1%. And that's why it's easy to forget about it. But if Will Levis would have been picked where most people projected him to go, we would be talking a lot more about Will Levis. Okay? Carthon spent a second round on Will Levis in the draft, positioning him as Tannehill's potential successor. With Tannehill entering the final year of his deal, it seems it is only a matter of time before the Titans initiate a passing of the torch at quarterback. The soon-to-be 35-year-old is playing for his future. Ryan Tannehill's 35 years old? How old does that make us? Ryan Tannehill's 35 years old. Wasn't he just drafted to the Dolphins like 8 years ago? What was he, 25 when he was drafted? How old was Tannehill when he was drafted? I need a Jamie. You ever see the Joe Rogan podcast where he's like, Jamie, look this up. 2012, he started his rookie year. So Tannehill was born in 1988. So yeah, he was 24. So 2 years plus 10, 12 plus 12. He was 24. So what was he, 25, 24? Okay. Not far off. Give me a round of applause. Come on. Praise me. Come on. Kirk Cousins, number 2. Interesting to see Kirk Cousins on here. He's such a likable guy. I just feel like as long as you're Kirk Cousins, you're always going to have a seat at the table. Like you can't be a miserable person to be around and suck at football. But if you have an off year, but you're just a great guy to be around, we'll deal with it. Like Jimmy Garoppolo. all of the guys love Jimmy Garoppolo, but could you imagine if he was just like the worst guy to be around? I mean, we like laugh about his injuries. We're like, oh yeah, he's gonna be hurt, but we don't actually like, like think about like how toxic injury people can get. Like, remember when Derrick Rose, Chicago fans know what I'm talking about. Derrick Rose's type toxic behavior. Um, I mean, Kirk Cousins got that same leeway. Like he can, he's got a little wiggle room. But that's why I'm interested of what this article says for him to be on this list. Cousin has carved out a remarkable career for himself. He entered the NFL as an afterthought, a fourth-round pick selected by Washington the same year it selected RG3. Wow. That's interesting. I don't know why I didn't know that. Kirk Cousins was picked in the fourth round in the same draft that the Commanders thought they drafted their franchise future. Meanwhile, RG3 is on the sideline reporting Kirk Cousins. Man, see what I mean about don't blink. Don't blink. 11 years later, Cousins is a four-time Pro Bowler and whom the Vikings have built a contender. But Cousins is entering the final year of his contract. Minnesota hasn't made any drastic moves to prepare for a future without him, preserving his chances of earning another deal that could put him in line to retire with the Vikings. He's maintained a consistent level of play, completing 65.9% of his passes for 4,547 yards, a 29-14 touchdown interception ratio in 2022 for a team that won 13 games and an NFC North title. However, yeah, this is what I'm waiting for because I don't know if he belongs in this list yet. Minnesota's Super Wildcard weekend exit from the playoffs was followed by the departure of several veterans. The team moved on from Adam Thielen, Zadarius Smith, Eric Kendricks, and Delvin Cook, among others. Well, if anything, they might be making room for that new Kirk Cousins contract. You already know Kirk Cousins said that he wants to go call his lawyer in what was it, Chicago? Was it Illinois? I don't think he said Chicago or Detroit. I think he said Illinois or something because he wants to get his grill. He needs, he needs some more money. Anyway, however, Minnesota's exit and the release of their players, they're saying, could it be Cousins' turn to exit the Vikings next? If the Vikings decide they like what they have in fifth-round pick Jaren Hall, perhaps the team will turn the page. If they don't wish to go in a different direction under center, Cousins might get one more deal with the franchise that made waves by fully guaranteeing his first deal in Minnesota. I would say that's a fringe. That's a fringe one. Because I believe even if Kirk Cousins doesn't have a great year this year, I believe somebody else that's having, quarterback challenges would offer him a deal. I think this list should be reserved for players that literally, like, no shit, their career, they will not get another chance. Like Russell Wilson, if he repeats what happened last year, he won't get a chance. No one's going to be like, I want that. If Baker Mayfield doesn't have a good year, no one's going to be like, yeah, let me get Baker. Michael Thomas. This is a great example. It feels like Thomas has been at a crossroad for 2 years now. After setting the single season record for receptions in 2019, Thomas has played just 10 games over 3 injury-plagued campaigns. New Orleans is giving Thomas another chance in 2023, retaining him on a 1-year incentive contract. That might be what Michael Thomas needs, is an incentive contract. A reason for Michael Thomas to play. It's likely time to produce or move on from Thomas, who should have a better chance of succeeding now that Derek Carr is quarterback. But none of that matters if Thomas can't stay healthy. Michael Thomas, draft him on your fantasy team. Do it in the 8th round. Just low key. Just dude. What if Michael Thomas and Derek Carr? What if it works? I like to have a guy like that on my roster. I'm going to draft all my for sure dudes, and then there comes a moment where you gotta get a couple wild cards. what they call them, boomer bust. Okay. And here we go. Look at this one. Um, this is this is the one of my guesses is here. Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield. Mayfield is now playing for his fourth different team since last summer. The decline has been steep for the number one overall pick in the 2018 draft, a player once billed as the savior of the Cleveland Browns. Mayfield could turn it all around with a productive season in Tampa. The task won't be easy, though. He arrives in Florida as the successor to the greatest quarterback of all time. Mayfield will team up with Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Russell Gage, and Rachaad White. These weapons, while not as deep and diverse as the set with whom Brady won a title, won't be the issue. It will come down to whether the Buccaneers can protect Mayfield well enough to allow him to make plays. From there, it's all about Mayfield avoiding the same pitfalls, inaccuracy, turnovers that doomed him in Cleveland and Carolina. That's the thing. It just seems like so many people have a lot of potential, but the only teams that take a chance on them are dysfunctional teams that don't have a good offensive line. And then without a good O-line, you just like Russell Wilson last year, they don't have time. The receivers don't have time to finish their routes. So you end up throwing inaccurate passes, and that stat actually falls on the quarterback, not the receiver, but really it's the offensive line. And it's the team with good quarterbacks that the front office invest heavily in their O-line because they want to protect their greatest asset at quarterback. So it's ass backwards because the quarterbacks that really need a solid offensive line don't end up getting it. And the quarterbacks that could probably make do with their sheer talent without an O-line actually are the ones that get one. Mayfield still has some of the same moxie that once convinced former Brown John Dorsey to spend the first overall pick on him. He'll need to prove that he's good enough to be worth a multi-year deal, or else his descent could continue and Kyle Trask will be there to take the snaps. Very, very surprised at the next player on this list, Derrick Henry. We were just talking about Derrick Henry being responsible for a lot of the success Ryan Tannehill has had in Tennessee. This seems bleak in Nashville. Now I'm reading about Derrick Henry. Things seem bleak in Nashville. Tennessee's roster lacks proven threats outside of Henry offensively. Ryan Tannehill is entering the final year of his contract. Henry isn't getting any younger. It says the dreaded 30-year-old. Oh, they're saying dreaded, like the unwanted, the dreaded 30-year-old wall looms. I thought they were talking about his hair. I was like, I'm not reading that. Why did they write that? Okay, that is hilarious. The dreaded 30-year-old wall looms, and the Titans have run up enough miles on Henry's odometer to elicit a massive penalty from the dealership when it's time to turn in their lease. Speaking of the lease, there's only 1 year left on Henry's contract. He's set to make $10.5 million in his base salary in 2023, and the Titans might not be too interested in handing him a similar contract in 24. Not after Henry turns 30 in January. He showed small signs of decline early in 22 before rediscovering his form, a product of both persistence and stubborn usage. Henry led the NFL with 349 carries, the third time he's topped the charts in his career. The Titans have indisputably extracted the most from Henry in his time in Tennessee. And that is true. I mean, you talk about running backs having a shelf life, of maybe 5-6 years. And then, the tread gets worn on those tires. When it comes to drafting a running back, I mean, what Derrick Henry has done for Tennessee, if Derrick Henry retired today, he has already exceeded anyone's expectations, greatest, wildest expectations for what you can, what one player that you draft, what a difference he can make. Derrick Henry's exceeded all of that. The Titans have, done a great job using Derrick Henry, but with that usage comes the dreaded old wall that is looming around the corner. Dak Prescott. Dallas has had a good year in 20. Dak Prescott. This is interesting. This list is really interesting. There's definitely some I don't agree with, and there's some that I agree with. I wouldn't say Derrick Henry belongs on this list because I do believe somebody else would take a shot on him. And I don't think Dak Prescott does either because he did just win a playoff game last year, and Dallas hadn't done that since 1998. So anytime that your franchise is making progress, whether it's winning one playoff game or it's getting to the playoffs, when you're doing something that your team hasn't done in 27 years, it's not like the next year you're gonna be like, hey, let's get rid of this guy. The phrase, if it's not broke, don't fix it. I think Dak Prescott is not a top 10 quarterback, but I don't believe that he should be on this list because you got to know the team also. How long did the Dallas Cowboys stick with Tony Romo? And Tony Romo had a couple great moments, but for the most part, he was a mediocre quarterback. Dak Prescott's the same way. Couple great moments, but he's a pretty mediocre quarterback. And if there's one thing we know about Jerry Jones, he will stick with mediocrity for decades. But however, Dak Prescott is on this list, so let's see what it says. Prescott, meanwhile, had an okay year, completing 66.2% of his passes for 2,860 yards. Also, remember that he missed the first 6 games of the season. He had a 23-15 touchdown to interception ratio. The latter statistic, though, signaled a legitimate concern, and they're talking about his 15 interceptions. He came into a year where he missed 5 games. His passing yards paled in comparison to 2021, falling from 278 yards per game to 238 yards per game. If Dallas is going to get over the hump and back to the Super Bowl, it needs to be more reliable play from its quarterback. Well, maybe you shouldn't have got Brandon Cooks, and you should have got DeAndre Hopkins. Prescott could be nearing a contractual crossroads. He's carrying a $26.8 million cap number in 2023, but the number for 2024 balloons to $59.45 million. It's safe to expect Dallas will want to rework his deal to lower the latter number. And this next one was one of my predictions, Russell Wilson. The 2023 season will be massively important for Wilson after a first-year flop in Denver. Wilson's failures contributed to a disastrous 2022 season for the Denver Broncos, who fired head coach Nathaniel Hackett before he finished his first season on the job. The team traded valuable draft capital this offseason for coach Sean Payton, who is tasked with fixing everything that went awry last year, especially Wilson's performance. Given the contract the Broncos gave Russell Wilson before last season, it seems highly unlikely he's going anywhere anytime soon, even if he can't recapture his previous form. But 2023 remains a make-it-or-break-it season for him, because if he struggles again and the Broncos don't turn things around, the team is bound to consider other options at quarterback. This isn't that. I mean, it's an obvious assessment. You cannot be that bad, but I'm telling you, we're not going to be talking about this time next year. Okay, think about it like this: Denver won 5 games. They lost 4 overtime games. They had a ridiculous amount of 1-score games. So Denver, I'm telling you, Denver is going to double their win totals this year. Chase Young. Oh, that is interesting. Chase Young, the last 2 seasons of Young's career have not gone according to plan. After earning DROY, that's Defensive Rookie of the Year, in 2020, the injury-plagued Young has appeared in just 12 games. He recorded 1.5 sacks in that span. Washington simply isn't getting close to the quality return on its investment. The Commanders declined Young's 5th-year option this offseason, setting up a make-it-or-break-it year. I don't agree with this one, simply because even if Chase Young were to sit out this entire year, there would be a different team that will give him a massive contract. we've just seen too much when he is healthy. Excuse me. When he's healthy and he's in form, he is too much of a difference maker to just say, like, that's what I'm saying. That's not a make or break it year. Um, it may be a make it or break it year for a maxed out contract, but if we're talking about people's careers, dude, Chase Young literally could not have a single sack this year, and he could play every game, and he could not look good, and he will still get a massive contract. I'm not even going to read the rest of that. Josh Jacobs. What are they talking about? Some of these are stupid. Josh Jacobs is literally coming off his best season. A.J. Dillon. Okay, let's dive into that one. A.J. Dillon. Dillon has rushed 750 plus yards and at least 5 touchdowns each of his last 2 seasons. But he's the running back number 2 in Green Bay, stuck behind Aaron Jones as a traditional power back who carries value at the goal line in short yardage situations, but isn't used on every down. He recently said he's focused on playing free heading into a contract year. An interesting opportunity could await him in 2023. With Aaron Rodgers no longer around, the Packers might lean more on their running game. Dillon could help himself a lot by finishing with double-digit touchdowns and becoming a more reliable back, capable of turning short yardage situations into big gains. If he can do that, the Packers or another team will have to seriously consider paying big bucks to secure his services. Now, I do think that AJ Dillon needs to have a good year to stay relevant and to get a second contract, but I don't believe that there's a scenario where AJ Dillon is going to get so-called big bucks. Look, Austin Eckler can't even get big bucks, right? We saw him. AJ Dillon's not going to get it because AJ Dillon's not going to have the kind of year that Austin Eckler just had. People are just drafting new ones. Like you just saw DeAndre Swift. Oh, let's give him to Philly. Then we'll draft Jahmyr Gibbs, Alabama's running back. We'll just get a new one, fresher, younger. That's just the way it goes. But I can agree that if AJ Dillon wants to get, a somewhat decent contract, I don't know what that would look like. Maybe $5 million a year for 4 years, $20 million 4-year deal. He's going to need to have a relevant year. And I do think that would be double-digit touchdowns and turning a lot of short yardage situations into busting a couple open and, getting some, I would say some runs that look like he did it. Yeah. I don't know if that's making sense, but when the running back, you can tell that he did all that. Like a lot of people say this about Emmitt Smith, where he would have all those great years, and people will still say it was the greatest offensive line ever. But then there's those hard fought yards. Those are my favorite. The ones where it took 4 guys to get you down and you juked 2 of them, you spun off one, you hurdled another one, then 2 guys hit you and you dragged them for 4 more yards. Like those are the type of runs AJ Dillon's going to have this year. Tua Tagovailoa. This one is simple. Tua needs to stay healthy and stay on the field. When he's healthy, Tua has proven he's good enough to lead the high-powered Dolphins offense to great success. He's had the league's best passer rating in 2022, 105.5, but he missed 5 games due to concussions and never started more than 13 games in a season. And they did finish top 5 in yards per game. So just imagine if Tua stays healthy for the full season, the Miami Dolphins will be the best offense in the NFL next year. The Dolphins have done nothing but indicate Tua is their guy, picking up his 5th-year option back in March. It's Tua or bust in 2023 for the Dolphins, but if he's unable to stay on the field, Miami might have to consider another route. I think Tua did good enough last year where even if he can't stay healthy for a full season, let's say he misses, 3 games, I still think that he would I was going to say I think he will earn himself another year, but he's on a contract year. But I still think he gets the contract, but it might not be as big as he would like it to be. Austin Eckler. Eckler made headlines by requesting permission to explore trade options this offseason, citing his desire for a better deal. The Chargers eventually agreed to revise his contract, including $1.75 million in added incentives. After back-to-back season in which he rushed for, and by the way, let me just take a moment to say Austin Eckler was doing a holdout, and he came to the conclusion where he said, no one's going to pick me up at this point in the year because the teams that would are going to draft a new running back because the draft was right around the corner. And instead of like getting into a pissing contest with the Chargers, he said, I'm going to bet on myself and I'm going to get back to work. Now, I love that because he is under contract. So he signed a contract and he just got to a point where he's like, I think I'm worth more. But instead of, scrubbing the Chargers off his social media account team because they want to franchise tag me. I don't know if you saw that Colin Cowherd short I posted where he's like, or are you going to, it's very cringy, by the way. Or are you going to scrub your social media account because they want to franchise tag me? And God, Colin Cowherd's basically just saying that they're super immature, with the way they go about their business. But Austin Eckler, he's an adult. He's like, I'll bet on myself. I'm going to be back to work. I'm going to have a great year. And after I have a great year, someone will pay me. And I love that the Chargers, eventually revised his contract because I believe that behavior should be rewarded more than the people that are just like, no, I'm not going to play. I don't care that I signed a contract. After back-to-back seasons, which he rushed for 900 plus yards, broke 600 receiving yards, and scored at least 18 touchdowns. That is a very effective player, by the way. Eckler is in the final year of his deal. He might never fetch elite money because of the reality of the position and the way the teams value it, but he could earn a good deal by posting an even better season in 2023. He's certainly positioned to do so in an offense filled with talent at key positions. For Eckler, it will come down to health and consistency. A year from now, he might be counting his new dollars, perhaps while wearing a new uniform. So there are definitely some that I agree with. There are some interesting ones. Some of them I couldn't even read. Like the Josh Jacobs was the only one I couldn't even read it. Chase Young, I believe, is dumb too. And Dak Prescott, kind of stupid. But as far as Baker Mayfield, Michael Thomas, Russell Wilson, Ryan Tannehill, maybe Tua, kind of. There's definitely some players on this list that are at a crossroads this year. And, to make it even more, I don't know, you could even say that any player in the NFL that is coming up on the last year of their contract is at a crossroads. This is not like, oh, just these guys are like, if you really wanted to, I get it. It's an article, but every player that has a contract expiring at the end of this season is at a crossroads. Like, this is just the way the NFL works. You are always betting on yourself. And if you're on a contract year, you are at a crossroads. There's no one safe. Maybe Patrick Mahomes. But yeah. I'm just trying to see here if there's any other news I wanted to go over today. Obviously, we don't have any Dalvin Cook news. DeAndre Hopkins is visiting the Tennessee Titans and the New England Patriots. We'll see. I think that might be what Tennessee needs. Obviously, they traded A.J. Brown last year. We saw how terrible of an idea that was. But if they could bring in DeAndre Hopkins and, squeeze the most juice out of Derrick Henry. You saw Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill on that list. If you could bring in DeAndre Hopkins, it kind of gives off Last Dance vibes. Big Last Dance vibes. Can they get the job done? Could DeAndre Hopkins be the piece that takes him over? I don't think so. I think they would have to add like 4 more pieces at the caliber, but you can never count out Mike Vrabel. He's a good coach. He could, he's gotten further with less. So we'll see. Love, there's an article here that says all eyes on Jordan Love as a new era begins. No blank, no beep. Of course, all eyes are going to be on him. He was a first round pick and he's replacing the greatest Packer, arguably the greatest Packer of all time. So, you can tell things are starting to heat up. You can kind of feel when football's getting really close. Travis Kelce, by the way, a lot of players that are playing at a very high level late in their career. As a fan, we always have a question because we see one or two things happen. We see a player play too long. Maybe Peyton Manning's last year, but they won the Super Bowl. Tom Brady last year. I feel like he needed that year for him. But we have seen like Jerry Rice. He literally he got cut. He was a Denver Bronco. He was on the Denver Broncos practice squad and he got cut. There are teams that hang on too long, but there are players like Calvin Johnson who are at at a Pro Bowl level and they just abruptly retire. So I think sometimes when players are, past their 10th season, once they get past that decade in the NFL and they're still playing at a really high level, we kind of wonder, at least I do, I wonder what's the long-term plan? Like I felt that way about Von Miller because he was still playing at a Pro Bowl level after 10 years. And then Von Miller was like, oh, I'm going to play for, another 10 years. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. I can chill. I can exhale, because we like to prep ourselves when, our favorite players exit the NFL. And then you have players, that are like Aaron Donald, who contemplated retiring after winning the Super Bowl. And he, had so much football left in him. So I think as a football, we're always trying to, emotionally prepare our hearts for the departure of our favorite people. And I think that's why it was really significant. Travis Kelce said, Travis Kelce isn't planning to hang up his cleats anytime soon. At 33 years old, his retirement topic will come up each year. Entering his 11th season, Kelce was asked Tuesday at the Chiefs' mandatory minicamp how long he plans to play. And this is what Travis Kelce said. Until the wheels fall off, baby. I don't know. That's my best impersonation I can do. I love this game, man. I know I'm going to miss it when I'm done playing. I hear you on that. And that's a business decision I'm sure I'll have to make at some point in my life. But for right now, I'm in this building wanting to win football games, man. He's turning 34 in October. He's definitely the NFL's number one tight end. He's coming off his 7th consecutive 1,000-plus yard season, his 8th straight Pro Bowl selection. He had 1,338 yards receiving last year, 424 more than anyone else at tight end. 4-time Pro Bowler, 4-time All-Pro, said he's found a good balance between his off-field ventures and preparing for the season. And I think that's part of it too. Like, he's got New Heights podcast with Jason Kelce, his brother. And I think sometimes players retire because they're eager to dive into life outside of football. But I think in some cases, if you have a whole nother life, like you can take off your football hat and he can put on his podcast hat. And, in a way, it's like, what's the hurry to retire? I'm already doing what I'm going to do when I retire. Right. So I think he has found a balance, almost like a cheat code where, what's the hurry? There's only me missing football. I have to look forward, leaving football. Every other part of leaving the game, I'm doing with this podcast. That is, by the way, it's growing insanely. I believe it's the number one podcast in the world, number one growing podcast in the world. They're doing giveaways and prizes, and it's fun, and they're bringing in cool guests. It's a great podcast. So I think sometimes people just leave the game because they're excited to see what life after football looks like. But in Travis Kelsey's life, he might have cracked the code because he seems to be doing life after football things during playing football, and it's clearly not affecting him on the field. So, congratulations to Travis Kelsey for figuring it out. And by the way, I hope the Chiefs suck this year. Just kidding, but seriously, Kelsey is fourth all time in receiving yards among tight ends, 4,783 yards behind Hall of Famer Tony Gonzalez. That would probably be at Travis Kelsey's rate. That'd be about, conservative side, 6 more years of football. And that is probably how many more years of football Travis Kelsey will play. So, yeah, just thought that was a little cool, cool story right there. And if you guys are new to this podcast, please follow, subscribe, like, share with friends, coworkers, anybody that you kind of like a little bit. Just tell them about our show. Tell them that you guys love it here. Tell them that we interact with our fans. We don't make them pay for their questions. And if you weren't on our episode on Monday, then you probably missed the whole entire thing where I'm going to be going to a shit ton of NFL football games in person this year, including games in Jacksonville, games in Miami, at MetLife Stadium week 1, games in Buffalo, games in Kansas City, games in Denver, games in Green Bay, games in Detroit, all within the first 9 weeks of the season. It is going to be a wild ride on this podcast, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart. If you are new to this podcast, you are going to be saying 1 year from now, I was subscribed before they had 1,000 subscribers, right? This is the time to get in. And I personally, I'm not saying that. So it's like, oh yeah, we need you to get in. Like, the numbers are going to come. They're going to come really soon. But we just appreciate it if you guys do subscribe, because it lets us know that this podcast is reaching new people. And as always, you can follow me at FTBLONLYPODCAST. I forgot to spell. And my partner right there at the top of the screen, and now Rick, ANDNOWRICK. He doesn't know yet, but we're going to the Bears Broncos game week 4. Somebody let Rick know. And we will see you guys tomorrow night for another episode of Only Football. And until then, go Broncos.